content over everything.
You. Let's have you over here.
Do you want any climate
I
stuff?
agree with what you're saying.
We've got climate banners.
I'll leave it for now.
Yeah, okay. Something like that.
We
should do this, yeah. Yeah. No, we should do this. I agree.
I mean, even if it's just, 10 minutes worth, we just see how the arguments go,
He's enjoying his girlfriend. 100 years ago, if you had a girlfriend, you're still a wife.
Right, let's have you then, let's have you.
100 years ago.
You're going to interview him?
1930s,
Well, I mean, I don't mind asking a question, but I think...
No, this guy. You said you wanted him on.
Oh no, he was great, but he's great spontaneous. No, it was on a joke, but he's great spontaneously, aren't you? You're like Moses. You're like Moses. The speaker's Moses.
Moses.
He's got over 10 million votes. That is a lot of people voting for him. Yeah, so it's not all dead and
Well,
buried.
the votes went down, was it 8%? And they'd gone up 8.5% in 2017. Are those the correct figures?
I think in 2017 it was over 12 million, now it's 10 million. So
Yeah. Can you remember the figure? Labour vote increased 8.5% in 2017.
What's the percentage for 2017? I know what it was, 32%.
Yeah, have you got 8%?
Well, that was an increase of how much? Well, in 2017 it had gone up 8.5 or 9.5.
2017 went up a lot. It was the highest vote they've ever got. Well, these are details, though, aren't they? They are details.
I didn't know what he's asking.
Fire away, Mr. Corbyn, fire away. We are.
Are we ready?
It's
Well,
like,
we need,
you would have to gather them as we go
we need a
along.
bigger crowd.
But, you'll have to get them as we don't really. I think we need your point of view, and that's essentially what we're doing. Whether you've got a big crowd or not.
All right, well, I could say something to lead up to it.
You can just speak to camera if you want.
No. Well, I think it's better here.
I mean, you'll get, he's going to broadcast it, so
Of
you're
course.
talking to 5 people here. If you want to speak to camera on his own, that's fine.
You may be right in saying that he got more this time than Miliband did in 2015.
Yeah.
And also Blair, that's true, but all right, we
It
lost. Let's not try and fudge
what
it.
his point is.
Let's not try and fudge it. We definitely lost.
Yeah, he did.
They lost big time.
Did
This is being recorded, by the way.
Well, that's I'm not bothered about it being recorded, yeah.
It's completely
Here's
different.
your camera. Let's go round.
Do you want anything on?
Yeah, we'll quiz you. We'll quiz you and question you.
But there's stuff
You can
about
give your-
what's happening in
I think,
Australia.
well, that's another thing, isn't it? You want to do that here? You can talk to the man here. But I mean, you don't have to get on the platform if you don't want.
No, I think we
Because you've hardly got anybody here, so we can talk like that if you want. It's up to you. It's going on camera, that's the point.
Get on one step, mate.
Go on.
It looks
One
good
step up.
on the camera.
One step up.
There you go, it looks good.
Mr. Piers Corbyn is now going to address the crowd, or address some of the crowd. That's a lot.
Okay, well, there's 2 things I want to talk about. One is just to get it out of the way, what's happening in Australia, and then we'll move on to the general election. In Australia, as you know, there have been massive forest fires, and the Green people, Extinction Rebellion, are claiming this is all to do with CO2.
Not just them.
Not just them. But the fact is that actually carbon dioxide is a fire extinguishing gas. So the idea of this is nonsense. The reality of what's happened in Australia is that green policies reducing the cutting of undergrowth to prevent fires, those have been cut. Because these people want these emergencies, they want these crises to blame man-made climate change.
Well, it could just be
so-called.
cuts in government policy, can't it? It can be cuts.
Yes, but it's been deliberate
Okay,
all
but
over the world.
The other issue isn't the other issue what the actual cause in climate
Yes.
or in meteorology, what the cause of the dry season
There's
and
two
the
things,
burning
yeah.
is.
Yeah. The meteorological causes of the situation, the drought, is the circulation patterns in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, which follow natural cycles. So we have a natural, very dry period now, and that is why there's a possibility of fires. The fires are bigger and dangerous because of their deliberate policies of reducing fire prevention activity, such as cutting of undergrowth. And this type of things happen around the world, where in Britain, for example, the dredging policies on rivers have been drastically reduced, again to make automatic floods will follow, such as in the Somerset levels. Back in Australia, these policies have been deliberate and they're exploited by Extinction Rebellion and others in order to pretend the man-made climate change is serious and caused by man. It's nonsense and we have to combat it. This Friday at Australia House near the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand, Extinction Rebellion and others have called a protest to demand the Australian government does something. Well, look, what the Australian government should do is imprison the green mad fanatics who've been lighting fires.
Them?
Yes, imprison the fanatics who've been lighting fires and
fires?
Yeah, they've been lighting fires.
But who says that?
The 20 people have been arrested in Australia for deliberately lighting fires. Deliberate arson to get publicity and blame the so-called climate change problem. These people should be arrested and they should bring back proper fire prevention policies. So we're going to go down there as well, Friday 12 noon, get there at 11:30 to say what has to be done is action to bring back proper fire reduction policies. Okay, so I would end that point there.
What about your brother then?
Well, my brother, Jeremy Corbyn, as you know, I used to be his brother, now he's my brother, and he still is my brother, I would say. Is he having a problem with the...
No, he's just lighting you up a bit more.
Okay.
Shedding light on you.
Labour lost the general election, as you very well know. But the actual figures show the Tory increase of votes was only 1%, 1.2%. And yet for that they get an extra 70 seats or so in Parliament. Now that is completely crazy as a system. But that is a system.
That's because Labour lost a lot of votes.
Labour lost votes, but not to the Tories, because Labour supporters are not willing to vote for Tories generally. What happened, some stayed at home, and it was a slightly lower poll, and a lot of them voted for the Brexit Party in the Midlands and the North because they wanted to have Brexit, which was voted on, and that was correct. However, the result of that was it let the Tories in massively number of constituencies which would never, in normal circumstances, return Tory candidates. So that is why we have this victory for the Tories. But be clear, it is not a strong victory. On the ground, the Tory support is actually weak, a plus 1%. The Labour support hasn't gone away. The Brexit Party will now die completely because Nigel Farage has done his job. His job was to deliver a Tory victory by whatever means necessary.
That's true.
And this was to take the working class in as a Pied Piper. Him and Boris were Pied Pipers to confuse people. And accompanied with a massive, unprecedented lie campaign against any Labour leader that's ever stood, the biggest lie campaign ever, they managed to pull it off. But you see, the Labour Party has not been destroyed. That, however, is the next project of the ruling circles. They want to destroy the Labour Party as we know it. They want to bring it back to Blairism or worse. They want Blairism or worse, and they have their candidate already lined up, Keir Starmer, the architect of the double-dealing betrayal of Labour policy in the shadow cabinet. It was compromising with him and Emily Thornberry which led to this certain defeat. You see, what we should have had was Labour for Brexit and save the NHS. Whereas the Tories would be Labour for Brexit, the Tories would be Tories for Brexit and destroy the NHS. So Labour would be Brexit plus NHS, what we should have had, and Tories Brexit minus NHS. Then it's a no-brainer. Labour would have won. However,
well, it's difficult for Labour to play the national card in these circumstances.
Of course, but
that's why this patriotic progressive is a lot of nonsense, isn't it?
Oh, of course, there's a lot of nonsense talk. But Labour could have won under that platform, but Jeremy was forced into compromises with people who were there to betray him from day one. So what about the way forward then? Keir Starmer could win with media support, even though he's not popular in the party, doesn't essentially support the basic policies of Labour for nationalisation, for increasing minimum wage, lots of things. He may support them on paper, he may do, but his history is as an extension of EU bureaucracy, and he's not a man of the left. Whereas Jeremy has serious working class policies to make Britain a fairer country. Now, there are other candidates who support that, but they're little known. There's various candidates coming forward who are really just copycats of Starmer, and they will just hand over their votes to him when the time comes. So the only way forward is for Jeremy to stand again. Now, there's a petition around. I've signed that petition. I urge people to do it. It was started maybe straight after the election, I don't know, but I found it online, and that is the way forward. Jeremy Corbyn should stand again to confirm his mandate among the people, and he would win. He would win, and that would be a massive, massive, massive blow to the ruling circles, because one, Labour's progressive policy would stay on the agenda 24/7, and two, we'd have a voice for peace in the world. The leader of the biggest political party in Europe, namely my brother Jeremy Corbyn, would be fighting for peace to avoid world war, whereas Starmer, Thornbury and all those others, whatever they say in public, will be bowing to the American wishes, American imperialism, Donald Trump's games with his generals. Who knows what is going on? But what's going on now is bad, 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 and dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. And only Jeremy Corbyn is of all the leaders of European parties, he's the one who can actually mobilise to stop this world danger. So he is needed and must stand. He's needed for world peace, he's needed for the interests of the British working class, to defend Labour's really progressive policies for true fairness in Britain. So I urge you, find that petition online, circulate it, sign it, and when the time comes, turn out to support Jeremy Corbyn continuing as leader of the Labour Party. Thank you.
Hey!
Why does
Question.
the Corbyn look-alike avert World War
Sorry,
III?
what?
Why does your brother, or a look-alike, or a replacement of him, avert World War III?
What's that?
Why do his policies in any way avert the present status?
Well, Jeremy's
Particularly
always
when
been
he's against
campaigning
Brexit.
for world
Particularly when he
peace
was
against US
particularly when he was against
imperialism.
Brexit, sorry?
Sorry, speak
Particularly
up.
when he was not committed to remaining in Europe. Your brother.
Sorry, I
Not
didn't.
really clear what you're saying. What are you saying?
Oh, sorry. Why does the election of your brother's successor, or even your brother, if that occurs, why does that help to avert World War III?
How will it help?
If it should occur?
How-
Particularly when the election of that person is actually contrary to, it doesn't really believe in Europe.
Right, well,
Separate.
on the Brexit issue, people have voted for Brexit. That must happen. with Jeremy there, it would be a fair Brexit, and he's already made points in Parliament that whatever Boris is doing doesn't seem to be what he claims he should do. So the Brexit issue is resolved in principle, but it has to be
Not in
implemented
practice.
for the many, not for the few. On the world stage, it's very important for the Americans to have allies around the world in order to sell their policies to their own people. Allies around the world when they start wars. Britain is their favourite lapdog. And if the Britain is not there as a lapdog, the Americans have a problem. So that is why it's so important for Britain to be led by someone who will not just follow US imperialist policies. And my brother is one of them. Starmer may say all sorts of things now, but in the end, he will follow American policy, just as would various other candidates.
That doesn't answer the question. It doesn't. You don't explain why that your brother or your brother's successor will, having similar policies, will avert.
Well,
also the world. How
I
does
don't
that
think
occur?
any successor there, certainly not Starmer, would have similar policies.
You don't want to alienate
Good.
Europe. You
Ian
don't want to
Lavery and others,
alienate.
but see, they're unlikely to get elected because they're not known. You know, Ian Lavery's a great guy, but he's just not well enough known.
He's not well enough known.
Sorry, what?
Who's
Well,
not
he
well
doesn't
enough?
have that authority in campaigning against. I mean, Jeremy's known for decades.
He's been all
for
over the
campaigning
year,
against
all over the world.
imperialism.
You know.
Yeah, it's a fact. Like him or loathe
He's
him, that's a
spoken
fact.
at meetings all over the world on resisting US imperialism, or indeed any imperialism, but fighting for national liberation and the democratic rights
So
of ordinary people.
why didn't your brother want to internationalise his importance and influence in Europe, within Europe? Why was it always a second or qualification?
Sorry, I'm not sure what. See,
Why wasn't your brother more internationally oriented in his views?
well, he is internationally oriented, but it goes beyond Europe. I mean, Europe is a monopoly capitalist club, basically. I mean, you know, we don't want to discuss it in detail, but internationalism in terms of fighting for world peace extends way beyond Europe.
In any case, he advocated the unification of the unity of the workers' parties in Europe to
Of course.
fight against capitalism, to protect the rights and advance the rights of the workers.
Yeah.
So,
His involvement in Europe has been to defend workers' rights. Now, I think Europe is not defending workers' rights. It's busy, you know, attacking workers in France and Greece and so forth. But, you know,
No,
there may be legal
the European
arguments
Union
that Europe
defends
has
workers'
good
rights.
laws,
Well, does
but
it?
they're not implemented.
Well,
in France, the government of France, Macron, is attacking the rights of the workers now. There's a general strike by public sector workers because they're increasing the age at which you have to retire. So that's an attack on the workers' rights.
in that respect.
Well,
Yeah.
and what?
It
in
doesn't
Bulgaria,
mean, it doesn't mean it's a
in
general
Bulgaria,
attack. It's
wages
as to
about
that
300
example
euros
given,
a month.
As to that example given, perhaps. But why are we then going to have to realign with workers' rights in Europe?
I mean, I think it was a bit of misnomer throughout the whole Brexit discussion to present it as the workers' rights in Europe versus no rights in Britain.
Yeah.
It's actually not
We have
true.
rights anyway.
Because the work, like as I say, in Bulgaria, it's about 300 euros a month, the wages. In Poland, the workers have been coming here working cheaper than British workers, largely because the economic conditions in Poland, okay, it's been growing, but at the same time from a much lower level. So the idea that European unions defend workers' rights is wrong. There was some legislation in Europe that protects workers' rights, and Jeremy advocated defence of them. But that's not to say that Europe is an institution defending workers' rights. Look at Greece. You know, in Greece, the people were going on the street shooting their brains out in the middle of the square, pensioners, because they were starving. In Greece.
Eating grass, making soup out of grass. I mean, you know, nominally the European Union defends rights on paper, but in practice, when the chips are down, they do not. They're there to hold down workers' wages, actually, and their rights in the interests of monopoly capital. What we have around Europe now is a lot of Polish workers come here, but Ukrainian and Romanian workers go into Poland.
That's true, yeah.
And in Poland, these workers are objected to because they're holding down wages there. And here, people object to Polish workers coming who are objectively holding down wages. You know, because the trade unions here are not strong enough to fight for a minimum wage
the essence of
imposed
it.
everywhere.
Essence
That is
of
the
it.
essence of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, workers' rights is all about workers organising to defend their rights. If you don't organise, you know, you're done for, aren't you? Simply,
But
if you don't-
surely
if you
an
don't protect-
alignment with Europe would have been able to strengthen.
Well, we already had
workers'
an
rights.
alignment.
It's not an
We had-
alienation
we
from
had an
Europe.
alignment.
That's what Brexit's done.
An alignment with who?
we
With
were
those
a-
bureaucrats?
with the European.
Well, we were aligned with Europe under Margaret Thatcher. You can't say she was a friend of the workers. We were aligned with Europe under Tony Blair, but he wasn't really a friend of the workers either, was he? So, you know, it's not quite as clear cut as that argument.
During
Although
the
I
refer-
accept it part.
During the referendum campaign, a lot of French workers, especially rail workers, came over here and I went to their meetings where they were saying Britain should oppose the European Union and Britain should Brexit. They wanted Britain to Brexit because they said the whole thing was being used to impose on workers in Europe and in Britain, and they wanted true international solidarity between workers in action in France and in action here to
I mean,
oppose privatisation.
that's essentially the problem, is that you've got monopoly capitalism from Europe and you've got monopoly capitalism from
That's
America,
right.
monopoly capitalism in Britain, and then we're asked to choose between them.
Yeah.
We don't want any of them. We have to have solidarity between the workers in Europe and the world. Britain, America, the world.
Look,
That's how you advance the workers' rights. And people knew that 150 years ago. You know, how else are you going to stop the undermining of workers' rights when capital is global? How are you going to do it?
But all the early socialists pointed out that the ruling circles across Europe have more in common with each other than with their own working classes. That's what they said, and that is true, and it is still true.
True today, yeah. More true today than ever, actually.
Except it's
That's us done, isn't it?
Is that it?
Thanks very
Interesting.
much.
Go
Yeah,
on.
that's fine.
So
Great.
sign that petition,
I'll think about-
campaign
I'll think
for
about
Jeremy
it.
Corbyn to continue as leader.
I like Keir
Thank you
Starmer.
very much. Thank you very much.
From now to man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
If it's Sunni killed Shiites or so whoever is committing the injustice, we should be against it. And it's this post-sectarianism where we defend whoever is on the, whoever's oppressed. Yeah. So that's the other point. Another point about the Iranian, especially Qasem Soleimani, is he defended China in their oppression of the Uyghur Muslims and the Christians who are also being persecuted in China. So he supported the persecution, and he denied the genocide that is happening against them, where 1 million Muslims in the Uyghur lands, also other minorities like Christians, as I said, who are being incarcerated in concentration camps. They have their organs harvested, indoctrinated, forced to